Okay, all right, guys, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to another edition of Rising Tide Explorers Knowledge Board here. We got a great presentation for you today, and I'm going to share with you a couple of things before we get going here and introduce to you our presenter. So right away here, I'll bring up, this is what we have going on. Our Rising Tide Explorers Home Edition campaign. As you know, during this strange time, we're not able to explore as much as we usually like to. So what we have done is created a virtual campaign to keep people engaged and educated. We love sharing all this stuff with everybody. It's part of our mission. So we didn't just want to put everything on pause, and we're working to bring a lot of cool scientific knowledge and things about Southwest Florida to you. Right to your computer. So here we are. And some of the things we're doing, just to refresh you, if you've been here before, you probably heard this. And thanks again for tuning in. But we got Explorers Academy, which is fun activities for kids. We just launched our first science project video a few days ago, which is how to grow your own mangrove. That's fun for adults too. I do it myself. So check that out on our YouTube page, or go to risingtidefl.com/academy, and you can see we got crossword puzzles, word searches, scavenger hunts for wildlife, all kinds of fun stuff. Great for kids, but it'll keep you busy and learning as well. So it's a fun thing to do. Battle of the Bay. We just launched several minutes ago our Invertebrate Conference Part 1 video, and that kind of breaks down the matchups for our Invertebrate Conference in the round of 32. What Battle of the Bay is, it's like an NCAA tournament, except it features the creatures of the estuary. There's the Vertebrate Conference and the Invertebrate Conference, 32 total critters that are facing off against each other. They rely on your votes to be crowned grand champion of the Bay. Every vote you cast is a chance to win boat tours, kayak rentals, Rising Tide Explorers gear, like hats and shirts. So get your votes in, super easy. It's a lot of fun. The videos are pretty hilarious. So check it out, and you'll have just as much fun as we are with it. And then, of course, our knowledge board. Today we have a very cool presentation with Captain Sarah Norris, and I'll tell you more about her in a second. But coming up next week, remember it's every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Next week we have a really cool guest speaker, Allie Smith from Audubon of Western Everglades. She's going to be talking to us about some of her work she does with the wonderfully weird burrowing owls of Marco Island. I got to go out and do some banding with her once, where we actually had to capture the owls and put bands on their legs, and it was a lot of fun. She does some super cool work down there, has hundreds of really passionate volunteers that help make it possible to protect and preserve this really cool critter that lives right here in Southwest Florida. And then the Wednesday after, on May 13th, we have Snakes of Southwest Florida with our own herpetologist, Matt Metcalf. He loves the slithery nope ropes. He would hate me if he heard me say that. But he will talk all day about them, but we'll make sure he stays somewhere between 20 minutes and an hour. But he's going to talk about his research on eastern diamondback rattlesnakes and federally protected eastern indigo snakes, which is actually the largest native snake to North America. He's been to the Amazon rainforest for months at a time doing cool research on all this stuff. So you can really learn about a commonly misunderstood animal by joining us for that presentation. And today we have Captain Sarah Norris, who's going to talk to us about sea turtles of Southwest Florida. Captain Sarah does the boat tours for us here at Rising Tide Explorers. You may or may not have been on one with her, but if you haven't, I suggest you do. They are a lot of fun. She also works in the Stewardship department at Rookery Bay Reserve and runs the sea turtle monitoring program there, and is completing her thesis on sea turtles based on the work that she's been doing over the last 5 years or so. So before I delay any more and continue talking, how about I turn it over to you, Captain Sarah?
Okie dokie. I can figure this out here. Oh,
there we go.
Oh.
Yep, we got your screen there, Sarah.
Is it going?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All righty. Well, welcome everyone. I'm gonna just keep this little box so it's not in our way. I'll move it if it is. But yeah, so like Ryan said, biologist with Rising Tide Explorers. About me, born and raised in Florida. Not too many people can say that. I did my undergraduate degree at Florida Gulf Coast Environmental Studies and minor in biology. So, you know, like Ryan was saying, we're a bunch of nerds here at Rising Tide Explorers, and turtles are my favorite thing. Senior year, I got to do study abroad, where one of the things we got to do was go on a sea turtle walk, and after that, it's pretty much history. So, 6 years ago, interning for the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and then Rookery Bay, and then was able to be brought on part-time to work see the Cape Romano monitoring program. So, let's get into it. So we have, you know, we're going to do a quick refresher on all the turtle species and what's going on with them. So there are 7 sea turtle species. So you can see all of the different ones of them here on the bottom right. So first you've got the loggerhead. They're the most common one that you would find in Florida, especially this time of year with nesting season right around the corner. Then you've got the green, which is larger, also pretty common in our waters. Then we also have the Kemp's Ridley, Leatherback, Hawksbill, olive Ridley, which is only found in Australia. So 7 species worldwide, and then 5 of which are found in Florida waters at this time of year. Greens are pretty popular as well. The Kemp's Ridley is the most endangered of all the species, but they're found here in the Gulf of Mexico and right here in our own backyard of Southwest Florida. So they really like this area for foraging. They come over to this side of the Gulf to, you know, forage and get larger until they develop into their more adult stage, and then are over on the opposite side of the Gulf of Mexico. The leatherbacks are the largest of the species, so they can reach about so just as tall as me. No, I'm just kidding. But they are huge. They look like little Volkswagen beetles coming when they come up onto the beach for nesting. Then the hawksbill are really, really beautiful sea turtle species, and you'll find them on coral reefs and those sorts of habitats. They're feeding on sponges and things like that that grow on or near those coral reefs. But they've been around for a long time. So their predecessor there, you can see in this blue outline, you know, here anywhere from 80 to maybe 66 million years ago or so, and they grew to be 13 feet long. So really, really, so the turtles we have today obviously aren't as large, but are, you know, pretty cool and are essentially our version of a dinosaur today. So a little bit about their general life cycle. So all species sort of follow this pattern or diagram on the screen. So starting down at the beginning at the nesting beach, which we'll get into a little bit more later today, or at nighttime to lay their eggs onto sandy beach or coastal area. So whether that's, you know, the main, you know, maybe Naples or Vanderbilt Beach, or barrier islands like Key Waden, or down in the 10,000 islands. Regardless of where they are, Florida or somewhere else around the world, they come up onto the beach at night. They try to find a suitable spot. The process takes, you know, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour or more. And then what they're doing is essentially finding a spot, digging a hole with their back about the size and 2 feet or so down in the ground for loggerheads, and then they're laying eggs. So anywhere from 820 eggs for loggerheads specifically, and then they'll cover up all those eggs, and then, oops, let's see, we got, oh, audio is cutting in and out. Okay, Well, let me see if I can move spots a little bit here. So back to the turtles. I'll do my best to stay on the internet, stay stable for everybody. But if you, let's see, chat. Oh, Ron's handling it. Awesome. All right. So back to the turtles. They lay their eggs in the ground and in the hole that they dug with their back flip up, and then they leave. So that's all the motherly instinct that they have in them. They don't come back. They don't stay with the eggs. Then once those eggs hopefully hatch, the little hatchlings will come out again at nighttime as well, and for the water. So they are walking as fast as they can to the brightest horizon, which should be the water line there. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then what happens is they're trying to get to these offshore currents that will bring them these coastal or feeding zones. So whether that's an area like the Sargasso Sea, or maybe other sorts of feeding grounds, those little hatchlings want to get there where it's a safe haven. They can hang out and feed until they get larger, until they get the size of a dinner plate or so. Then they're going to come back to those near shore foraging grounds until they reach their adult stage. So they would begin mating and making their way back to those nesting beaches. This takes quite a bit of time. You know, this here in the open ocean feeding zones is known as the lost years. They don't really know a whole lot about that part of their life cycle. It's so small. It's pretty difficult to track those little hatchling turtles when they leave our beaches and head for the open ocean. You know, it's a really difficult thing to track. So it's not until they get to be a bit larger, depending on where you are and they're able to start tagging individuals that are dinner plate size or larger. So that's that. So that is really cool to be able to do this presentation now, because if you do live here or are here part-time or have come to visit, this is the time of year where we're kicking off our sea turtle in Southwest Florida. So if you get to be out on the beaches now that they're open, you may come across, if you're out there, something that looks like almost like a tractor tire coming up onto the beach. So if you see people out on the beaches that are doing that, bit of insight into what they're doing out there and why. So again, that's what I do at Rookery Bay. So it's really neat to know more about this and what people do, you know, around the state and around the world. So what happens is, again, those feet here on the left are coming up under the cover behind a spot to lay eggs. So when nest monitors go out in the morning to see what happened the night before, is they're looking for these tractor tire-like tracks nesting females. So there's one of two things that can happen when they come up onto the beach. So either they nest or they come up onto the beach and say, never mind. So whether this on the left a picture of a false crawl or a non-nesting emergence. So this is when they come up and for whatever reason decide not to lay. Case here with this picture, you know, we're not really sure why. She just sort of came up and did a big U-turn. You can tell by her track, you know, way through, doesn't really seem to be any sort of disturbance or anything like that. Whereas the hand side, you can really see her track has disappeared, and And so you can tell something definitely went on. So when nest monitors are out there in the morning doing their surveys, they're sort of like turtles. They have to really decide and decipher what she did the night before. So by looking for these clues, lots of sand moved around, thrown, that her tracks sort of disappeared. Really seems like she put in a lot of effort to nesting when she came up on. So again, when they're doing this, they're laying anywhere from 80 to 120 ping pong ball sized eggs. And the nesting females can be anywhere from 200, maybe even 250, 300 pounds. So that's a lot of turtle, not very graceful when they come up. So, imagine lugging 200 pounds on your back, army crawl style, onto the beach. That's what these, it's pretty amazing and pretty incredible if you ever do get to see that. And really enjoy them. People can say that they've seen it, which is pretty neat. So they don't just do this once, though. They may do this so times per season. So the nesting females, they may nest every 2 or so years. So they're not doing this, but there's enough females that nesting does occur every summer. They're just not all synced up when they do it necessarily. So back to why they do it so often, but there is a strategy to this. So just remember that they do this multiple times a season. So that's a lot of laying and depositing on our beaches. So those eggs, if all goes well, take approximately 60 days to hatch. The nest monitors are out there in the morning. What they're looking for is a depression in the sand. Within that, so if they see this evidence over here on the picture on the right hand side, they mark it off, whether it's a beach and stakes with the caution tape around it, or if you're at on Key Waden, or even at like Donor Wiggins state protected or conservation areas, they may put some sort of screen or metal cage around the nest to protect them from predators. When they're checking for signs of emergence and hatchlings that may have come out the night before, they're looking for and if it hasn't been pretty windy or rainy, you can actually see all the little flipper tracks making their way. So again, this is a really, really neat experience to see if you ever do witness them hatching at nighttime. They're boiling out of the sand. So that's one of the terms that they call it when they are hatching out. It happens. So I've only seen it a couple times, and it's over in a matter of minutes. It's really, really neat. If you go on YouTube, sea turtle hatching, you can see some videos of that as well. So it's a really nice to see all that, those sweaty mornings, long mornings, outrunning storms. This really is a very rewarding thing to see once we get into all this nest hatching out. So then what we do after that is, if we observe the 3 days, so all this work is conducted under FWC permits. So we have to really follow the strict guide. Here in Florida or in other states, they have their own guidelines as well. So not anybody can just go out and do this work. You have to be trusted and trained properly to do these conservation efforts. So 3 days after the emergence, that window gets to come out on their own and to be able to do it as naturally as possible. Sometimes they don't all come out on one night, half the nest the next night. You just never know. So by giving that 3-day window, that allows for things. So then after that, you'll see then if you're out on the beach again, the nest monitors will pull out all the comments. They want to get a count of how many eggs hatched, didn't hatch, how many of those hatchlings made it to the water. And sometimes they'll come across that didn't come out, even with that 3-day window of being able to do it as naturally as possible. So if that is observed, they will be released, make their way to the water and try to catch up with their brother and sisters there. So, you know, again, you may see roped off areas, and that's to ensure the cages are to allow these guys to get to the water as safely as possible with digging them up and causing any damage. So why is this important? So here in a good number of beaches that are monitored by either the Collier County Parks and Rec, the state park, Delmar Wiggins, Rookery Bay, Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and then U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So, you know, we are one tiny piece of the puzzle here in the state. So if you squint real closely, those southernmost purple dots are Rookery Bay managed areas or co-managed areas for sea turtles. Just about every sandy stretch of Florida is monitored by someone, whether that's a local, state, federal agency, or even organizations. And this is all really, really important. So, you know, folks might just enjoy doing the work or seeing that, but that data being collected, whether it's counting nests, evaluating nests to determine productivity, goes every single year. All this data is sent to FWC to be managed and compiled for the future. It's important because that'll go into potentially making decisions down the line for policy, how to better protect these species, maybe come into play when people want to construct something on the beach, or renourishment and things like that. So a whole slew of different, the data is important, and being out there during the heat of the summer to do it, to get that information to send to. So some of the predators, we're going to get into some of the threats now. So all this work is really great, and why people are doing this and why it's important to be out there when we are. So natural threats, again, these turtles have been longer than we have, so they know what they're doing. So but there are some things that they do have to overcome. So predator in this photo on the left hand side here, but she is missing part of her front flipper. So there are turtles that see if you're out on the boat, or if you happen to catch a day nester or something like that, or if you've been involved with monitoring efforts before. Turtles may have evidence of some sort of old injury, whether that's missing part of their flipper, maybe a little like chomp mark out of, or maybe it's an old healed shark bite injury. You know, so they're very resilient, and these females will still continue these injuries and lay their eggs. You know, so it's pretty amazing. Other predators that are natural things like raccoons, or like this night heron that are getting into nests or trying to eat hatchlings on their way to it is sad, but it can happen. But again, those monitoring efforts, things like caging and things like that, do help deter keeping but that's just part of their life cycle and history and so on. So again, these females will lay many nests, so they're trying to access as possible. So another natural threat is storms. So for those of you who owned or were worried about your homes here in Southwest Florida a few years ago, we had Hurricane Irma. So the track of that storm here, it came up directly through Rookery Bay Reserve and really hit Marco Island and Collier Boulevard, Square Boulevard, all the way up through and up into Lee County. So unfortunately, hurricane season is also during they have been doing this longer than we have, so that's the reason why they lay so many eggs. So nesting begins in May, typically about the beginning or middle of August. So females are laying eggs in that window of time, 60 days to hatch. So it's all about timing. So again, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're seeing eggs, if you will, throughout these several month periods. So, you know, if a storm hits, say, in the beginning of the nests that were laid in May and beginning of June may be negatively impacted by said storm. But nesting will start at the beginning of August, so they have some time to make up for any losses they incurred in the beginning of the nesting season. In the case of hurricane in September, so everything that had already hatched out did pretty well up until that point. So it was only the last that were still out incubating in middle of September, so that were negatively impacted in our area at least. Impact the state the same. So, you know, there's been cases where storms ride up the east coast of Florida, those nests and nesting areas may hit, but here on the West Coast, we don't necessarily feel those effects and vice versa. So it's really important, you know, that all those areas around the state are doing the same conservation efforts to ensure as much protection as possible in terms of predators, but then any negative impacts that may be happening in other parts of the state throughout the summer. So some people, when you move this nest here that's really close to the water line. So again, this comes into play with permitting and what do or not do per FWC. So, you know, if a nest gets laid, you know, sometimes we're like, oh man, like this is such a great spot. It's going to do so well. It's far away from the water line. Boom, you know, a month into incubation, a storm comes and a good chunk of that BJ may be putting that nest at more risk than it was at when it was originally laid. At that point in time, there's nothing. So again, they're, you know, hedging their bets by nesting multiple times throughout the summer for this very reason. Pretty close to the water line, and it was observed the following morning. There are protocols to put in place that you can move that at a certain time the morning after it was laid, and that's it. That's the only opportunity for any potential moving of a nest too close to the water line. There are cases if beach projects are going on, say renourishment or something like that, will also have to be moved, but they will have to be done within that time period as well. And that's because the eggs really start developing. In this case, in this picture here, if we were to move it and this nest was, you know, 2/3 into its development, we may do more harm in the nest because you run the risk of detaching the embryo from the egg or the yolk sac, which then would cause the embryo to no longer be viable. Whereas if we left it here like we have, it does the indoor getting the waves washed up and over the nest, those eggs can tolerate it to a certain degree. The hatch success may never been impacted by high tides, but they can, it's like a little bit of the Goldilocks effect. You know, they can tolerate it for a little bit. So that's just something that ends up getting determined at the end after excavation to see how many hatched and didn't hatch. And all those tide coming up and over the nest area is also recorded and submitted to FWC. So those are some of them. So now I'm going to get into a little bit about the non-natural threats. And this really feeds into research projects, not just dealing with the nesting females, are important. So all research, whether that's things being beaches or in open water and things like that that are really, really important. So an illegal trade, we don't really see very much of that anymore here in the U.S. Back before the Endangered Species Act, we did see that a bit more often. But every now and then you might see an article, FW with, like in this case here, an ice chest full of sea turtle eggs. And they harass or take, whether that's eggs or actual sea turtles themselves. So that is something messing around with at all, and can incur a big hefty fine for doing so. Another turtle that unfortunately gets highlighted a little bit more in the illegal trade or harvest is the hawksbill. So again, they have a really, really strictly were taken for jewelry making or hair pieces or things like that. So you might be able to go online and order tortoise shell sunglasses or whatever. Now they make fake ones, like sunglasses, but it's, they're not real. Real ones, you can tell a little bit of a difference, like you can see here. To differentiate. Again, you don't see that a whole lot anymore here in the U.S., but you may see it in other parts of the world. Okay, Brian, try turning off your video and see. All right, we're gonna see if we can help with the ladder. Okay. Non-natural threat is the fisheries. So something that was done to try to combat this was to install these what we call turtle excluder devices. And these are really, really interesting because they, a problem that was happening with these commercial fisheries when they were doing these big trawl net or trawl fishing excursions, as you can see here. There's this large net, and they basically pull this boat to try to capture anything in their way. So whether they're targeting specific species or specific types of fish, that's where they're going to be fishing, whether that's here in our waters or other places of the world. Well, they're not only catching the fish they're targeting, but they're catching anything else in their way. And one of those things that was observed for a long time was sea turtles. So what they decided to come up with is adding this little like trap door, if you will. So these are called turtle excluder devices. So this device is installed partway down the net, and it's essentially a grate, and a metal grate. This grate basically has slats that are big enough to allow whatever they're trying to catch to pass through, but then too small to allow anything that they don't want to catch to pass through. So in this case, sea turtles. So essentially those sea turtles hit that metal grate and then pop out the little escape door there, and then don't run the risk of getting stuck at the bottom of the net and getting stressed out or dying because they can't escape and come up for air and that sort of thing. So that's a really great thing that was put in place to mitigate those circumstances. Another non-natural threat is artificial lighting. So this kind of brings us back a little bit to nesting in Southwest Florida. So is starting to happen here in Southwest Florida anytime now. So sea turtles, the female nesting females and hatchlings can be impacted by artificial light. So if your community pool light is on, or if there's a street light that's visible or something like that, and it comes into view of the nesting female or the hatchling it can really potentially cause them to what we call disorientate. So they're drawn to the brightest horizon, but some shades of light they are more sensitive to than others. So, for example, certain tints of red or orange don't seem to impact them, whereas those more bright, harsh, whiter tints of light do. So there's a big push, and this is all regulated by the local level more so often than not, as to what you are allowed or not allowed to have during sea turtle nesting season. So, often you may see lights out for turtles. So there may be rules and codes that are enforced this time of year to make sure anybody who has property, whether that's a home like that, condo building, to have all of those lights turned off by a certain time of night and remain off until the next morning, so when the sun comes up. Another option that has come into play is because, without having any lights, it can potentially be a little bit dangerous or unsafe for us people, is to come up with new lighting to have during that time of year. So of like in this pamphlet here, a condo, so people can still feel safe in their home, but these lights are from the beach but are not going to be producing a particular wavelength that are going to impact those nesting or hatchling turtles. Another non-natural threat is coastal armoring or beach renourishment. May live near Marco Island, maybe saw a little bit of this year or even in past years, or even up in town in Naples, dredging projects and regrading projects of the beaches. And then coastal armoring is referred to as when you're armoring the beach. So whether that's some sort of seawall or fencing that is disrupting the shoreline of the beach. So this does not really help the beach to kind of naturally erode or over the year or years. So it really is detrimental to nesting sea turtles, and that if they really need to lay and they come up and they're keep hitting this stretch of seawall, and they decide to lay their eggs, obviously from this picture you can see that there's not a lot of beach or good nesting beach habitat here, that those nests maybe are not going to do all that well. Beach nourishment is often done outside of sea turtle season because it's pretty expensive to do during the nesting season. It costs a lot of money in terms of permit and people to be out on the beach to make sure that there's no turtles that are being disturbed during the beach renourishment projects. So that's why you'll often see those done outside of sea turtle nesting season. And would be climate change. So there's several different facets to this. One that I'll talk about is, so research is starting to be done or has been done and starting to be done in other parts of the world with nest temperature. So what we know about sea turtles is that they are temperature sex dependent. So this means that temperature part of their incubation will determine if the hatchlings will be either males or females. So in the sea turtle case, warmer temperatures will produce females and cooler temperatures will produce males. So like to say hot chicks and cool dudes is a pretty easy way to remember it. But if they reach that threshold temperature, each species may vary, but you'll produce males and females in the nest. So there can be variation throughout the nest potentially as well. Again, more research is being done and to really perfect how all that works. But it's pretty interesting because nests may be on track to be, let's say, females. It's pretty warm up until that point, and then we start getting maybe more of our afternoon showers, and that the nest temperature and sand temperature down, and may end up skewing that nest towards the male end side of things, just because we started getting more rain. So during that certain incubation point in their incubation process. So there's research being done at Rookery Bay. It's pretty neat. It's, starting to show, that we're producing maybe more males than females, maybe, and this varies year to year and within a nesting season. And that research is being done by Jill Schmidt at Rookery Bay, whereas research being done on the east coast of Florida shows they're skewing a bit more towards the female sides of things. So that's really interesting to know, in terms of the bigger population, that you're not producing of one sex, and that there still is some variability, which is great in terms of genetics and keeping the population going and healthy. So a little bit more about what you can do to help try to get out of the doom and gloom, the sad things that are happening. So things that you can do: reduce single-use plastic and bring your reusable shopping bags to the store. So this is not only going to help sea turtles, but all other wildlife. So this is, really, really important just across the board, cutting out using things only one time, trying to remember to bring your coffee mug. I usually keep one in the car with me in case I decide to go for a surprise coffee stop or whatever. So then another thing to do is, if you are on the beach during nesting season, doing photography, again, that light can really, potentially disturb females and hatchlings that are on the beach at night. And if you do come across a nesting female or hatchlings emerging out of their nest, by the time you fumble around for your phone to try to get a good picture, it's already going to be done. So just sit back and enjoy the moment, and just take it all in. If you are out at the beach, a really good way to get exercise or wear your kids out, just digging these giant holes or creating these large sand hills, is great fun while you're doing it. But remember to flatten those out or fill those holes in before you leave. Those can really impede nesting females, as well as the sea turtle hatchlings, whether they get stuck or deters them and makes them take them longer to get water line. That's just wasted energy, and that's energy that they need to save and conserve, for either the next nesting cycle that they're going to do, or those hatchlings trying to make it to those offshore currents. So another thing to do too is to bring in your beach furniture if you're in an area that allows you to keep your beach furniture out at night. Again, this is at the local level, where those rules and codes are put into play. Females, like I said, not the most graceful on land. They do not have the ability to move backwards. So, if they do happen to run into, say, like a beach chair or something, they can't just turn around and go the other way. They may end up getting stuck and have to sit there the rest of the night until the next morning, when hopefully a nest monitor comes out and sees them and is able to let them free. Another thing is to volunteer, whether you're able to volunteer with an organization that does active sea turtle monitoring, or even some sort of conservation. It could be a state park, wildlife rehab center, or so forth. Many of these organizations really, really rely on volunteers to do their work, and a lot of their work that they do would not be possible without the help of volunteers. So, spending a few hours a week or whatever it is to help out these organizations really does go a long way, and they really do appreciate it. The last thing is if you see an injured or a stranded turtle, animal like a dolphin or a manatee, is to call the Fwc hotline. So the nice thing about this hotline is that there's always going to be somebody that's going to pick up the phone and direct your call to the appropriate person. So in my opinion, that kind of helps save time. You know, if you're not sure who to call or what to do in a certain situation when you see, you know, a protected species that may need help. So this is a good number to have saved in your phone here. Okay, and then I'm gonna let Ryan come on here and talk a little bit about this.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know there's a little bit of a lag, but it looks like we've retained just about everybody.
Okay.
And all the content was still there. So awesome. And the other way that you can help and support the sea turtles themselves and the work that we do, you know, here at Rising Tide Explorers, we are the exclusive eco tour partner of the Friends of Rookery Bay. And they support a lot of the efforts that go on for education, research, conservation that goes on here at Rookery Bay. So you can support programs like these not only through renting kayaks, getting on a boat tour, getting on a kayak tour, bringing your friends and family to experience the areas that support our sea turtle populations, but we have the Adopt a Nest program, which I think is one of the coolest things you can do, especially with what you get for it. So you can adopt a sea turtle nest for $250. And if you look at this picture in the top right, you'll see a sea turtle that says bottoms up. I can't really read the whole thing, but you'll have it a personalized.
Hauling proud.
What is it? Hauling proud? Bottoms up, hauling proud. So you can get your own custom sea turtle tag that will be attached to the nest that you adopt. And when you do it, you'll get a letter that gives you the location of the nest, when the nest was laid, the expected hatch date, so you can kind of know what's going on with your sea turtle nest. And you'll get a second letter when the nest is excavated, just to see the results and the success of the nest that you helped protect by adopting it. And in addition to that, you'll get an invitation to the end of season party, where not only will you get a great presentation by Captain Sarah and the interns about the research and the results of their efforts through the whole entire season, but you'll get hors d'oeuvres and cocktails and fun things like that. So that's a bonus. So by adopting a nest, you're supporting the monitoring efforts of the Rookery Bay Reserve, specifically the intern program. And I, for one, can really vouch for that, because I'm a product of that. I was one of the original turtle girls, as they say. So I started my science career at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary and at Rookery Bay as a sea turtle intern. So this is what kind of catapulted my career to pursue science, and eventually found Rising Tide Explorers, which now is a support organization for the Friends of Rookery Bay. So, you know, go out there if you have the means. You know, these times are not just difficult on small businesses, but you know, we can't support the Friends as much as we normally do right now due to quarantine and restrictions on what we're allowed to do. So one thing you can do in the meantime is adopt a nest, and you'll be able to get the updates on it. And I think that's super cool and exciting. So now I'll turn it back over to Sarah, because we already got one question. Are you able to see the question box there, Sarah?
Hold on, let me see.
I can read it to you if you can't see it.
Okay, I'm gonna flip it to this fun video because of a little baby turtle.
Oh, awesome.
Q&A from Matt. Do sea turtles choose a nesting site based off particular factors like bare open sand or lots of vegetation, flat or in the dunes, etc.? So yeah, that's a really good question. So they a bit by species into what their preferences are. Like for example, hawksbills, they love going up and getting into the vegetation, whereas loggerhead, they may tend to move a little bit closer to the vegetation, but may prefer a bit more of the open beach. And also can have to do with the slope of the beach. So, you know, if they are sensitive those cues as they're crawling up and out of the water, that may be a clue as to you know, if they would prefer to nest or not, which is pretty interesting. Those false crawls, sometimes it's pretty obvious and sometimes it's not. So that may be what's going on with them. Some of those cues that, you know, you are not as obvious, but may be playing a part. Sand composition and moisture of that sand as well. You know, if you know, they come up and they start digging their hole and maybe they're a little bit closer to the water line, and you know, just like you'd be at the beach and you're digging a hole and you hit there, if they start sensing some issues as they're starting to dig that egg chamber, they will, and they don't like it, they will abandon that effort and either move somewhere else on the beach or return to the water and come back up in a different spot to try again. Okay. I don't see another one. Ryan, do you see another one?
I asked one myself, and I asked, what's your favorite species of sea turtle?
Oh, okay. My favorite species is the loggerhead. I am partial. I think it's just because they're here in full force this time of year. So something I don't think I mentioned this earlier is that the loggerhead, you know, again, if you're here or you visit Florida this time of year and you see those marked off nests, you're like, oh yeah, the turtles are back. I forgot. It's summertime. Cool. Well, that's not the norm everywhere. So the loggerhead turtle, the Southeast U.S. is the top nesting aggregate head turtle species, so in the entire world. So other parts of the world do not experience the number of loggerhead nests like we do. In the Southeast U.S., Florida accounts for 90% of that nesting, which is just crazy, which, you know, provides even more importance for all the work that's being done on the beach and in water research as well, to protect these species here. So they are my favorite large heads. They feed on large snails and mollusks. You know, some of the snails that we say are the beasts of the estuary. They're able to just chomp right through, no problem. So they are my favorite.
Awesome. Speaking of that, both the lightning whelk and the horse conch are featured in our Battle of the Day Invertebrate Part 1 video that was just launched about an hour ago. So check that out and you can learn more about the snails that the loggerhead likes to feed on, and you can decide who is the best and deserving of winning in Battle of the Bay. It's risingtidefl.com/battle. So I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in at the moment. Sarah, did you have anything else to share with us?
No, I just appreciate everybody tuning in, and I'm sorry about not so great internet connection, and hope that I answered or taught everybody a little bit something more. If you've got questions, just shoot us an email. I'd be happy to answer it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. And yeah, like she said, feel free to submit some questions if you think of something later, and be sure to put it on your calendar Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. We are having our RT Knowledge Board presentation series next week, Wonderfully Weird Burrowing Owls with Allie Smith from Audubon of Western Everglades. And the week after that, our own herpetologist, Matt Metcalf, instructor at FGCU and a biologist guide for Rising Tide Explorers, on the snakes of Southwest Florida. So all cool stuff you can learn about your backyard. Make sure you go to Battle of the Bay, watch those videos and get your votes in so you can win good prizes. Check out Explorers Academy and make sure to book some kayak rentals. In other news, we may be opening up private kayak tours soon. This is the first semi-announcement about what's happening. We're kind of keeping our ear to the ground and making sure that we do things properly here. So once we're able to, we're going to get our tours back on the water so you can join me or Captain Sarah or Matt or any of our biologist guides, a lot of which you've heard from so far, on the water. And hopefully we can get you out there so we can not only support the science community and the Friends of Rookery Bay, but have a great time learning about all the amazing things in our wild backyard here. So thanks again so much. I see a lot of comments coming in. You guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week. Have a good one, guys.